Okay, this says we're streaming online again, and hopefully I won't be getting the feedback this time through. So I'm sorry, Yuan, for the delay here. No. Yeah, the trouble is, okay, if I turn the headset off, I can, same issue. All right, I will try to muddle through. I will do my best. And I apologize to everyone for my confusion, because what I'm hearing is both the Zoom session later, the Zoom session, and then I'm hearing the YouTube sessions. So I'm going to have to turn my sound off or very low. So, all right. So, Nick, last week, Nicole responded to you, to a question you asked about the mother archetype.
Yeah.
And she asked me to forward it to you. And then I asked for her permission to read it to the group. But
Sure.
I wanted to ask you for your permission.
Oh no, sure. I mean, it's I take it as a, like, I mean, it was to me, but it's an open like, you know, it's a group thing.
Okay. All right. Then we will, I will do my best to muddle through here, because there were a number of questions. It's a question that came up, and I'm now no longer listening to the Zoom group. And so I'm just going to press on. So last week, and then I'll try to come back and listen to you. So last week, I didn't quite get to everything. And one of the things that I wanted to show first was that I wanted to show some of these queens, because we talked about the Empress as mother, right? But I actually have I have some queens here that I was going to show you, to show that the queens are not mother. So what I'm talking about is, in the major arcana, there is an archetype of mother called the Empress. That's the number 3 archetypal card. And in the suits, there's also a queen. And so you might get the idea that the queens are also mothers, but they actually are not. They're the feminine principle to the max on a specific suit. So I'm going to share with you, last week I shared the Empress cards. So this week I'm going to share, let's see, what did I do here? Just a minute, I need to admit a couple of people here. All right, so so this week what I need to do is share these queens and show you that they're not the same as mother. And so here's the first set. And as you can see, they have very different aspects. This is the Deviant Moon Tarot at the top here. And the bottom set is from Monday's Mythic Tarot, I think. And so here you have the Queen of Pentacles. She's got everything. Here's the Huntress. And then here's the Queen of Cups. She's all happy. And here's the Queen of Wands, and she is creative, one would think, but then the ones on the top give a whole new meaning to what the feminine principle in these various suits are. So on the left, the Queen of Pentacles, the Queen of Swords, Queen of Wands, and the Queen of Cups. Okay, so I'm going to stop that share. That's probably enough of the deviant ones. And then here's some other queens. And I'm going to ask you for your comments on these here. So this is another set of queens. The upper one is from the Cosmic Tarot, and the lower one is from the Jungian Tarot. Now with the Jungian Tarot, he is showing these persons in their elemental place in the tarot deck. And so the Queen of Wands is the fire symbol. So she's sitting, she's got water behind her, which represents the unconscious. They all have the unconscious behind them, but she's sitting in fire. The swords, which is the air symbol, has her in the clouds. The cups has her in the water all the way, and the pentacles has her on the earth, down on the grounded, rational part of the world. And then in these upper ones, I think you can just have a sense of what these queens are like. The Queen of Pentacles, she's got all the money in the world. She's very happy. And she's just sort of gazy here. And the Queen of Cups looks like she's sort of just kind of happy. Queen of Swords is, just don't mess with me. and the Queen of Wands is looking very creative. She's the fire symbol, and so she's looking a bit seductive and so on. She's going to try to get things moving. So do any of you have thoughts about any of these cards as we look at them first? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to stop that share and share another one more group. I think this is the one. Yes. Okay. All right. So here's here are the queens. The upper ones are the queens from the Ted's deck that Melissa Townsend did, and the lower ones are queens from her other deck. And so you can see how expressive the Queen of Swords is. You can see her, she's working on what her plan is. Meanwhile, the Queen of Pentacles is very happy. Any comments about any of those? So you can see how quite differently different artists take in and express these ideas, these fundamental ideas that appear in the tarot. They're very unique, and that's why I really like looking at the tarot, because it's always new to me. Okay, so I was going to read some comments that that the Love Doctor, our friend Nicole from Australia, She might be here later, I suppose, but she made some comments in response to a question that Nick asked. And so I want to read those. She says, so this was Tuesday morning. I got this after last Monday's session. She says, "Hi, Skip. To address in more depth, question Nick asked, mothering of the mother archetype in men." Okay, so this is, she's quite right that it's the mother archetype in men. It's not a specific person necessarily, except to the extent that we put our own living mother into that archetype and project on her these energies, which are actually within us. So from a Jungian perspective, we have these things in us and we project them on some living person, typically our own mother. So, okay, well, it's a depth process. A man goes through in relation to his own mother, of course, as you refer. However, to go deeper, it's within the heart space of the man. It's also in the body. It can be anywhere in the body, and it does move. For example, a lot of women complain their partners want them to be their mothers. A lot of men can get this confused as well. And I know I suffer because my first wife wanted me to be her father. And so anyway, she goes on, especially if they have not done the work through their own mother relationships. The process of delving into the mother is such a powerful journey, deeply personal. If Nick wants to ask more, he can Zoom me. And then she goes on, from a woman's perspective, in intimate relationships, to delve into this area, a lot of growth in space can be a huge game changer in how he relates to all women, how empathetic, how he listens, how he shows up actually, sexuality, prosperity, it is all of life, how he relates to his own body. For example, a man might want his head stroked. He might have his ears played with. The memories of his mother might come to the forefront when his partner, man or woman, is doing this. Unlocking and uncaging these neural pathways and patterns can release a shift, a lot of rubble. I notice women do men a huge disservice by bypassing the mother, and they don't get the true authentic relating from the man as they stay on the surface. When a woman in an intimate relationship can hold space for the whole man, she doesn't need to split or deny or go to prostitutes. He does not need to split or deny or go to prostitutes. There is always a lot of rubble in this area, especially if it is a complex. Creativity is locked and trapped. It does not get expressed. And so that was her first response. Then she came back and wrote to me again. And she says, I did it in a shamanic way, also while my mother was dying. The thing is, you are focused on centering the group process and intention, so it is hard to go deeper. Okay, she's referring to me and how I'm trying to lead the group process here. I'm writing this book, The New Feminine, so it all fits together. So he moves past it. The mother is a powerful doorway. He may be with an or be married to an empress, but not realize it. Okay, so this is one of the biggest issues that we have, which is we tend to think that the only empress is Queen Elizabeth in the UK in London, and or maybe the First Lady of the United States, and we don't realize that, you know, we're actually with a goddess or an empress. And whether it's our mother or our spouse, and we ought to be acting accordingly. That's one point. And this won't come through if he hasn't done the work on self. The clearing of what I call shells around the heart, armor. Men in jail, boy, oh boy, they're doing mother work in there and in their spirit. They feel so much shame and disgust with self. I have to work through it with other men. So I had responded to her that she was quite right, because in the Marines, we intentionally sort of destroy the personality that a young person comes into the active duty with. And after it's destroyed and after we beat it down, then we have to rebuild it the way we want it for a Marine. And so that means that the platoon sergeant typically has to be both mother and father to the various Marines, the lower enlisted Marines in the group. And so, yes, the sergeants are teaching pistol range and rifle range and obstacle course. Those are all very manly things, but they also teach how to make your bed, how to keep your clothes clean, how to iron your clothes so that they're proper and your uniform looks proper. And you know, most of the Marines I know wouldn't think of letting their wife press their cover, the hat that we wear in our utility uniform, because everybody has a style that they like to do it, and your wife can never get it right for you. So, but it's the sergeant that teaches you how to do that. And so that's something your mother normally would do. So do I have any comments or questions about that? Okay. We have a silent group on YouTube tonight, but you're all welcome. And if you want to join this webinar panel, it's probably too late for tonight, but I'm going to put my email address in the chat so that you can find me and write to me if you want to do that. So any other thoughts about mother before we go on to the emperor? Okay. All right.
Yeah,
So
sorry, I just wanted to talk about Oedipus complex, if that's possible.
Okay, let's talk about Oedipus complex.
I have, obviously, like many men, most men, when you're describing the kind of things that women might do when we're snuggling and cuddling, you know, all this ear touching and that kind of thing, I've obviously found that very arousing. And I've never thought that maybe it's because my mother did that when she was dandling me as a baby. And maybe it did evoke some precognitive memories, some of the earliest memories of my life. I certainly know I like the feeling. I certainly know I love being touched around the head. And, you know, I know it's a common thing for adults to, you know, play around, tussle around the head of children and that kind of thing. I never thought about it having a connection now between the intimacy of a woman and a man. And I think that's because there's a kind of a forbiddenness and a, you know, it's just something, just an area of, we don't think about, that the touch of our parents, while it teaches us to to be
Yep.
tender. We don't think of our parents as being in a physical relationship. You know what I'm getting at? A sexual relationship. So I'm just I'm kind of freaked out by the conversation a bit, tiny bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So Brendan, will to all my YouTube listeners, I'm hearing double, and it's separated by 1 minute, and so I'm going to be responding more slowly than usual tonight. And so if you could give your comments in like 1 minute blivets, that will be helpful. So there's a gentleman, Mitchell, here on the YouTube chat who is asking for a summary of the Oedipus Rex. And so I'm not a wild favorite of emphasizing the Oedipus complex because I think we overemphasize it. Freud obviously did overemphasize it very much. I mean, as Jung said, Freud discovered one archetype, the Oedipus complex, but that's the only one he discovered. And so the thing about the Oedipus complex is it's the idea, according to Freud, because everything was about sex for him, he said it was about wanting to be the lover of your mother, or the electric complex, the lover of your father. And there may be a twinge of that, but my assessment over it, and I've been reflecting on it for many years, I think it relates to this idea that people don't want to get out of the house. They don't want to leave the family home and go out and spread their wings and live their own lives. And the animal world, boy, is it hard to not do that. I mean, a baby bird is born, and within 4 weeks it has to be flying, and within 6 or 8 weeks it has to be flying and feeding itself. And so they all become mature birds very fast. Like in 8 weeks, most of the baby birds are mature. And but in the human species, we have extended this period of childhood because we have to grow our big brain, and then we have to be educated to know what to do with the big brain. And so it's how should I say this? So the tendency is to not want to leave home. And we joke about it saying failure to launch. But I think that from my perspective, that's what it is, that people just won't face maturely what it is that they have to do in life. And that's what the interesting thing to me about the Bhagavad Gita is. It's teaching young people how to sally forth and do the necessary in their life. That's what the story is about, really. It's not necessarily battle royal between your relatives, although it can be that, but it's rather the tendency to want to shrink from the responsibilities of adulthood is the way I interpret it after a lot of thought. Okay, so Mitchell says he was writing a draft and he didn't even mean to say that. So, all right, I'm going to shut up for a minute. And then, Brendan, is that helpful what I said?
Yes, thank you, Skip.
Right, and Mitchell says on the chat, I agree with Skip in that it's not all about sleeping with your mother. Right. So anyway, all right. So going on with Father, last week we started with this book, The Fool's Pilgrimage by Stephen Heller, and it's the Kabbalistic meditations on the Tarot. And so I'm going to share what Stephen Heller said. I think I have it here with any luck. Ah, yes. Okay. All right. So I'm going to share this screen and then I'll read what he says here. Okay. So I'm on page 104 of Stephen Heller's book, and here's what he says. It's quite brief. I think this is way too brief. So that's why we're doing this, because you can't just sum these archetypes up so quickly and really appreciate what they mean. But here's what he says. The Emperor, the fourth arcanum, commanding and regal, the Emperor sits on his rock-hewn throne, which is decorated with the emblem of Aries, indicating fiery strength. Okay, so it's got the ram's heads on it. The feminine power of love and the male force of living, of life-giving potency, are balanced in his hands as orb and scepter. And so we know even to today that the kings and queens of England hold an orb and a scepter, which represents the power of love and the power of potency. Seated on a mountain of barren rock, he rules over the world of matter and has mastered the strength to rise above it. Order, virility, paternity, and the lawful regulation of life are embodied in this arcanum of the kingly man who becomes a reigning god by transmuting earthly power into the spiritual power of unlimited love. And then he points out that on the right side here on page 105, the Hebrew character is He, and this is one of the four characters that appears in the word Yahweh. Yod He, Vav He is what the four characters are, and it's not pronounced the way Westerners who are Christians pronounce it as Yahweh. But anyway, so this is the second of the Hebrew characters. It's the 15th path. Now that I still don't know, and I'm studying the Kabbalistic Tarot right now, so I'm not going to focus on that at this point in this class. So at this point in this class, the only thing I'm trying to get across is the idea of these 22 archetypes in the major arcana. That's the first, that's step one. Then we're going to go to the minor arcana, and then we're going to talk about things like the Kabbalah. But in any case, the way these Kabbalistic Tarot people think about this is that each one of the arcanum is a path. And so remember last week, this was the path for mother. And so here's the path for father. It's said to be the 15th path. And so if you remember, before we were talking about an archetype being like a dry riverbed. Well, that's kind of a path, kind of the same sort of thing that they're saying in this Kabbalah approach. And so then energy gets put through that for whatever reason. Something happens in your life and you have energy put through it. And so that's what these archetypes are about. They're actually connecting up different features of your life, these 10 balls in the Kabbalah. And we'll get to what those 10 balls are in a moment, but I'll just read on here. So the 15th path from Tifereth to Chakma. Okay, so this is Tifereth and this is Chakma. And the keynote, the harmonious condition of enlightenment, allows the soul to travel to the source of divine love, which is the inseminating father principle of all creation. It is thus that we gain a window into eternity and behold our Father who is in heaven. So the motto of this archetype is the highest virtue, like a halo zone, circles the emperor's head, and he alone is worthy validly to exercise it. And that comes from, believe it or not, Goethe's Faust, Part 2. And the meditation that Stephen Heller gives us, keeping in mind that he's an ordained minister or a priest, is, I am man among men, a child of earth am I, yet in me burns the fire of the highest heavens. May the fire of love and goodness so purify the earthborn nature of my personal self that I may be found worthy to enter the sanctuary of the temple of true love. Only the pure in heart can truly love. Yet there be no self in my love. Let there be no self in my love, meaning no ego. Let the beloved be all and self be naught. O love that drawest forth the spark of holiness from the earth, lead me to the rose upon the cross of gold. O love, thou art the lifeblood of the universe and the sustainer of my soul. Give me strength to ascend unto thee. From the shadows, lead me into thy compassionate radiance. And so here he's definitely suggesting that that love is the highest meaning. Any comments on that before I go on?
I'm astonished, Skip, because I hadn't realized that the fellow who wrote this, you said he's an ordained minister, so he's not a Jewish rabbi. He's not a...
No, he was ordained as a Catholic priest.
Because his writings sound like he has, he's writing about the Kabbalah from a very Catholic point of view. I mean, would Jewish people talk about a golden cross? Would they talk about identifying God as Father? Those are both Christian images.
Right. And so keep in mind that when we're talking about this Kabbalah here, we're not actually talking about the Jewish Kabbalah. We are talking about the Kabbalah as it developed in mystical traditions which is spelled differently. So where is it? Okay, I thought it was on this page so I could show you, but in Jewish mysticism, it's spelled K-A-B-B-A-L-A-H, but in this form, it's normally spelled with a Q. I don't have that
Yeah,
in
I've
front
seen
of
it.
me
I've
here,
seen it
but
with you.
maybe I can get it. Let me just a sec. Okay, so I can share this for you. No, don't want that. Okay, so this is the cover of Robert Wong's book, and what he's talking about here is mystical philosophy, and it is much, much deeper than just a rote type of thing, because as you see, this represents three-dimensional space, among other things. And so I'm working with this book now. I'm not feeling comfortable about teaching it yet. So I'm going to put that off for a few months while I get that under control.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay, Samantha asks, what is the title of the book? I was talking about this book, The Fool's Pilgrimage, Kabbalistic Meditations on the Tarot by Stephen Heller. Now, what I didn't get to, Brendan, is that Stephen Heller originally in his lifetime was ordained as Catholic priest, but he later became a Gnostic, not a Catholic. And so he's now quite old. I think he's in his late 80s right now. But he is, if I understand correctly, he is a bishop of the Gnostic Church. And I don't know how widespread the Gnostic Church per se is in the United States. I know that both he and another man that he works with named Lance Owens are both Jungian analysts, and they are both involved in the Gnostic Church as far as I know. So. Okay. Any other comments, Brendan, about that? Okay, so last week I was also working with the new Mythic Tarot, and it's by Juliet Sharman Burke and Liz Green, with cards by Giovanni Caselli. And I can confirm that even though I own the new Mythic Tarot cards, I have still not opened them. That's partially because in the book itself, there are photographs. Let me get rid of this virtual background here. All right. So there are photographs of each of the cards, And so it may be hard to see, but there's the Emperor and in this deck. So I really don't need to open the cards in order to read what's said here. And so I want to read a few things about it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to display in my screen share. I'm going to display some Emperor cards. Let's see. Here's a nice set from some of my decks, so that you can get an appreciation of what they are. All right. So this is some examples of Emperor cards, and so we have here the Rider Waite on the upper left, the Jungian Tarot in the center at the top, the Emperor of the Thoth Tarot at the top right, and then the lower left is Melissa Townsend's Emperor from the Al-Ted deck that she did. The middle one is from the Cosmic Tarot, and the one on the right is from the Spirit Song Tarot. And there she identifies specific focus issues of the father as focus and stability of the Emperor. Okay, so here's what Liz Green says, and Liz Green is a Jungian analyst, so I think we can pay attention to her in terms of the archetype. And you can see if you can pick out some of the things that are mentioned in here, although I will mention that in this, in the Mythic Tarot deck, the Emperor is holding a globe in one hand and lightning bolts in the other, and he has an eagle on his shoulder. So in the Liz Green Tarot, okay, let me just read it. The card of the Emperor portrays a mature man with broad and muscular shoulders and chest. His rich flowing hair and beard are vivid auburn, and his eyes are a clear sky blue. He faces us seated on a golden throne at the top of a mountain. His robe is purple, bordered with gold, and on his head is a golden crown. In his right hand, he holds 3 lightning bolts. In his left rests the globe of the world. An eagle perches on his shoulder. Behind him stretches a backdrop of snow-capped peaks. And then there's some sidelights here. The lightning bolt is Zeus's symbol of power, not only because of its awesome grandeur, but also because it lights up the sky. Zeus is a god of inspiration and sudden creative vision, and the lightning symbolizes his revelation of the truth. So it's like my father getting a lightning bolt of inspiration that we have to go out and get ice cream on after dinner some nights. That was a great inspiration. And so the eagle of Zeus's emblem, because of its keen sight and power to fly higher than other birds. As a bird of prey, it also expresses the aggression and conquering instinct of the god. And so in stage 2 of consciousness, our parents are our gods. And so that's what this emperor means. And then also Zeus made his abode the mountain peaks because he is a god of mental and spiritual heights, and his will rises above the bondage of the body and the limitations of nature. Okay, so that is her teaser. And since she's talking about something that doesn't actually appear in any of these cards, let me see. I'll show you another selection, and let's see if any of these do express it. Okay, so here's some more examples. Okay, so this is the Mystic Mondays deck. This is the Line Strider deck here. This is Melissa Townsend's deck, her regular deck that she uses for her divinations. And then this is the Golden Dawn deck, I believe, this last one. But none of them seem to have an eagle. And so none of them really refer to it as Zeus, but I think in terms of what Liz Green is talking about, that might be a good representation. Now, what interested me about Melissa Townsend's card is that this is an image very similar to an image I saw on a concert program one time, which was for a concert of Mahler's symphony called The Titans, I think. Or wait a minute, I need to check this with Brendan.
You might mean the Resurrection Symphony.
No, well, I don't know. Maybe the Resurrection Symphony. In that case, it would just be a movement in which I think it's called the Titans because it's about but anyway, the point being that our Father is like a God for us, and the Titans ate their children, and so that's the power that's represented there. And also on this particular set, on the Mystic Monday deck, I thought this was rather interesting with like a bear skin over the Emperor's body with the claws of the bear sticking out here. That's a very interesting symbol, and obviously a lot of heat symbolized in this particular. Okay, so I guess I should read what Liz Green said here, so I'll go ahead and do that. I'm sorry I'm having to switch on and off with my hearing because I'm getting two sound packages a minute apart here, so I apologize for that for everybody in the audience where that seems strange, but I'll read what Liz Green says. She says, and oh, by the way, it's also Juliet Sharman Burke, so I don't know which one wrote this, but it's very archetypal in a Jungian sense, which is why I want to read it. Here we meet great Zeus, king of the gods, whom the Greeks called All Father, creator of the world and sovereign of both gods and men. In myth, Zeus was the youngest son of the Titan Cronus and Rhea. a prophecy was given to Kronos that one day one of his sons would overthrow him and take his place. To guard against this, he decided to destroy his children. And for 5 years running, as Rhea bore him sons and daughters, he snatched them from her arms and swallowed them before they opened their eyes. This naturally did not please Rhea, who, when she knew that a sixth child was to be born, fled secretly to Arcadia and gave birth to Zeus in a cave. Then she wrapped a large stone in swaddling clothes and presented it to Kronos as her son. He promptly swallowed it. When Zeus grew up to manhood, he came to Kronos disguised as a cupbearer. He prepared a potion for his father that made him violently sick, and out of the old god's mouth came the 5 children he had swallowed, quite unharmed. Out too came the stone. Zeus then led his brothers and sisters in rebellion against Kronos and overthrew him and inaugurated a new rule. The new king of the gods made the mountain of Olympus his home and established a hierarchy of gods who obeyed his ultimate law. His symbols of power were the thunder and the lightning bolt. His volatile, fiery, profligate spirit expressed itself not only in the thunderstorm, but also in the many lovers whom he pursued and many children whom he fathered. Among them were Athene, goddess of justice, Dike, goddess of natural law, Moira, goddess of fate, and the 9 muses, patrons of the arts. His wife was Hera, goddess of marriage and childbirth, who ruled as his consort. Zeus dispensed good and evil according to the laws which he established. He was also god of the hearth and of friendship and the protector of all men. On an inner level, Zeus, the emperor, is an image of the experience of fathering. It is the father who embodies our spiritual ideas, our ethical codes, the self-sufficiency with which we survive in the world, the authority and ambition which drive us to achieve, and the discipline and foresight necessary to accomplish our goals. This masculine principle within both men and women differs from the nurturing and unconditional love of the mother when we met in the card of the Empress. Here it is the spirit, not the body, which is accorded the highest value and action rather than intuitive flowing with nature, which is demanded of us. The father within us also fosters self-respect because it is this part of us that can take a standpoint from which to meet life's challenges. Zeus could be compassionate and championed the weak and the dispossessed, but he could also be angry and vindictive if his authority was challenged and his laws broken. Thus, Zeus, the emperor, has a darker face, which is expressed on an inner level as a rigidity and implacable self-righteousness. To be in relationship with the inner father means to possess a sense of one's potency, one's capacity to initiate ideas and turn them into reality. To be dominated by the inner father means to be enslaved by a set of beliefs which crush all human feeling with their inflexibility and arrogance. Then, like Zeus himself, we must overthrow the old rule and inaugurate a newer and more creative one, lest we become petty tyrants ourselves or fall under the spell of a tyrant in the world outside. Having discovered the rich and fecund world of the body's needs and pleasures, the fool must now find ethical principles by which to live, for without the emperor, we are mere pawns in life, driven from within and without by blind instinct, blaming our problems and difficulties on other people and on society because we cannot find the inner experience of strength which the Father embodies. And then she gives a divination meaning. On a divinatory level, Zeus, the emperor, augurs a confrontation with the issue of the father principle in both its positive and negative forms. We're challenged to make something manifest, to realize a creative idea, to build something in the world, to found a business perhaps, or to establish the structure of a home and family. We are asked to take a standpoint, to become effective and powerful, to formulate our ideas and ethics. We are also asked to consider where the creative young king has become the rigid, oppressive tyrant, and where our ideologues are interfering with life and growth. When the fool meets the emperor after his sojourn in the instinctual world, he learns to confront worldly life with his own resources alone, according to ethics which he must develop for himself. Then he can progress on his journey with a certainty that he can be effective in life because there is something higher in which he believes and whose authority he himself now embodies. Okay, so that's what Liz Green says about the emperor. Any comments there? Let me put my headset back on in and see. So any comments, Brendan or Nick or Julie?
I have to say, Skip, I like to hear about the archetype of the father because I'm not a father. I don't have any children, but I do have father characteristics of starting projects and producing projects. There's a lovely line which kind of describes me at the end of Mr. Chips. And I don't know if you know the old, very maudlin, nostalgic book about the school teacher, Goodbye, Mr. Chips. But anyway, in the last paragraph, as Mr. Chips is dying, his daughter, or not his daughter, one of his colleagues says to him, well, Mr. Chips, were you ever sorry that you never had any children? And he said, what do you mean? I've had thousands and thousands of children. And so as a teacher for 30 years, continuing, I feel like that, 40 years continuing, but also other projects like a father I have brought to birth and continue to nurture. So I like what you're saying.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the role of father. And I think that one of our problems is that we don't understand that it's the people in our community like you who are fathering, for example, the Hallelujah chorus and the I'm sorry, I'm just getting very confused by the sound in my ears, but I was thinking of the piece that you conducted last year at your church. That's the Messiah. That's what it is. And so Nancy is here and she's watching, and she says, if one's father is an alcoholic, it can leave the adult child without his or her inner strength. And I do understand that. I had a grandfather who was an alcoholic, and it was very weird. He ended up dying when he was 68. And so we have to understand that we're in this role of emperor or God over our children when they're growing up, and we have to toe the mark, or we're going to bring up a generation of troubled children, at least troubled people. And we have a lot of that. And we have 50% of everybody the last 40 years is raised by single mothers. And that's a terrible thing, because they don't have a father figure to draw upon for experience. Yeah. Let's see if I have any more. Okay, I just wanted to also show the kings here, which are incomplete guys. In other words, the emperor is actually the combination of all these people. And so let me show a screen that's got the kings. All right. So they're the top of the game in that specific suit, but you can see how limited they actually are. So you can see the King of Pentacles. He's on top of the world. He's got the material world under control. We have such a person in current affairs today. He thinks everything is hunky-dory, and we should all love him because he's got all this money, but he hasn't addressed the emotional aspect of life. He hasn't shown any creativity or engendered any creativity among the people, and he's unable to cut through the mist, or maybe he is cutting through, but it's not in a good way necessarily. And so anyway, the point is to see these four cards, and I have a couple of other examples that show these kings as, although they're the pinnacle of their suit, they're really incomplete men. In order to have wholeness, you would have to embody all of these characteristics in one. And so that's one example. Let me show you some more. All right, so these are Melissa Townsend's kings. And this is one of the features that I love about this deck of Melissa Townsend's, because she's really captured it, I think, in the expressions in these guys' faces and so on. So you can really see the King of Cups. He's really, he's been in the cups a little bit too much, I think. And the King of Pentacles, he's got the world under control. Boy, you can't challenge him. And the King of Wands is creating something. You can see him seeing the light behind his eyes, which is it's a wonderful artistic thing that she's been able to show, where this guy, he's not really looking at you, he's really looking inward and looking for something creative. And the King of Swords, on the other hand, is penetrating, looking outwards, looking for the enemy. And that's a very interesting phenomenon. I'll just stop there and see if I can hear any of your comments on that.
I asked you to, in the chat, to talk about the synesthetic listening you had of the Mahler First Symphony and of maybe music in general. Are you able to, does music evoke in you an association with different things, or do you need the suggestion of, say, the editor? You know, that Haydn called it, Haydn's editor called his symphony the surprise symphony. You know, would you need that suggestion?
Okay, so Brendan's question is, Skip, can you briefly address your synthesia concerning the Mahler symphony? How did the music evoke an association with the classical worlds to you? Would you have thought about it had the editor not called it the Titan Symphony? Well, I found that symphony very disturbing, honestly. I had loved going to concerts when I was in Japan as a high school student, and I went to several NHK orchestra concerts in Ueno, and they were quite lovely. And so 16 years later, when I had the opportunity to go back to Japan and work there for 5 years, at the beginning of that process, I wanted to make contact with a woman I call my Japanese sister. And so I called her up, and sure enough, I could connect with her. And I call her that because my mother, when I was in Japan, had a very good friend who had college-age children, and she wanted them to be educated in the United States. And so she persuaded my parents to sponsor their 2 daughters to go to college in the United States. And so the first of these girls was, I guess, about a year older than I was. But what the deal that they worked out was that she would go and live with my grandmother for a year and take a second year of high school, so that second senior year of high school in English, so that she could brush up her English, and then she would go to college. And so then she went to college. So she was a classmate of mine in college. And then she went back to Japan, and I hadn't seen her again since we graduated from college. And so I called her up and I said, why don't we go see a concert together? And she chose this Mahler concert. And we went to it, and I found it the most cacophonous thing I ever heard. And I couldn't, by that time, her English maybe had degenerated, or maybe she hadn't experienced with these words very well, because number one, she couldn't explain to me what the concert was that we were listening to. And I said, well, what's the name of it? What does it mean? And she says, oh, it means something about giants or something. I said, well, you know, it made sense to me that it sounded like giants, but because it did, I mean, it was like gods fighting. But it was only in retrospect that I realized that the symphony that we went to hear was the Titan Symphony. So I don't know if that's helpful.
Oh, thank you.
But I mean, that worked fairly well, Brendan. So I'll try to watch the chat, and if you have other things that you want to comment on, I can at least comment through the chat, and without hearing you, which is very confusing tonight because I'm hearing both feeds. Okay, so I wanted to also share the Deviant Moon Emperor. So here's the Deviant Moon book. Okay, the Deviant Moon Tarot. And I introduced this last week. And so this is the card. I don't know if you can see that. This is the card for the Deviant Moon Emperor. And you can see, you remember last week he was talking about the checkerboard floor, which was in his nursery. And you can see the feet that are kind of bird's feet. And he's got a wand. Oh, and he's got his feet on a little devil dog there. See, I think, I don't know if you can see that, but there's a creature there at his feet that I suppose must represent a dog, and it looks like a devil though, and it has horns. I don't know if you can see that in the image, but in any case, it's an interesting rendition of the father. So I thought I would read to you what he has to say. And I see Art Patterson is here. Hi, Art. Nice to see you. I'm trying to explore the archetype of the emperor, which is our living father of all of us, each of our fathers. And so now I'm going to read to you what Patrick Valenza says in the Deviant Moon Tarot book. And here's what he says. The confident emperor strikes a majestic pose and revels over his latest triumph. He proudly conveys his dominance through his regal staff, which he uses to pin a horrible demon down to the floor. Here's a better picture of the demon. All right, I'm going to take my virtual background away so that you can, again, so that you can see this. All right, so here's the emperor, and he's got his foot on the demon, but there's a better picture. A better picture of the demon is right there. I think I got it. Okay, so you can see the demon, which looks like a pet dog, maybe. But in any case, that's his vision of it. Okay, so he's pinning the horrible demon down to the floor. The weight of his boot lends added physical assistance in keeping the beast at bay. The emperor must be ever vigilant, however, or else the vanquished creature will try to escape and cause havoc in the city once again. A small metallic moon has manifested into existence at the end of the emperor's staff. Let's see, you can see it there, this little moon. The silvery crescent represents the transformation of his subconscious thoughts into a tangible form. Through vision, self-discipline, and leadership, the emperor has mastered his mind and in turn his world. He has become a potent and effective example of his people. Pointing his finger to his head, the emperor shows us that true courage comes from the mind, not the heart. He waits in respite, yet this is only temporary, powered by the momentum of his success. The emperor looks to the future and his next conquest. So you can see him here looking to the future and his next conquest. Lovely guy to have your emperor, be your emperor, obviously. Okay, so then he gives us upright and reverse meanings. Upright meanings: take charge over your own mind. Take the emperor. You must master yourself before you can control the outside world. Do not be afraid to harness the hidden power of your subconscious. Use your intelligence to subdue any adversity that stands in the way of your ambitions. Thoughts alone, however, will not be enough to achieve your desires. You must turn your ideas into strong, determined action and boldly apply it toward your objective. Concentrate your mental energy into a clear purpose and lead yourself on to victory. Okay, so that's the upright meaning. The reverse meaning, Emperor reversed is a sure sign of insecurity, indecision, and incompetence. And again, that would be like Nancy's father with the alcoholism problem, okay, which is a sure sign, or a drug abuse problem would be a sure sign of insecurity. Mental concentration is unfocused, and you might find yourself unable to govern your own thoughts. Willpower is weak or impotent. Plans and ambitions fail due to inaction, while a lack of self-confidence allows outside influences to dominate your life. In an early design, a trio of miniature knights marches out from under the emperor's robe to help defeat a treacherous red bull. I later changed the bull's head into a demon's head for the final card. Okay, and so what he's talking about is this earlier design, which is right here, where the troops are marching out from under his robe. Would have been a nice addition, I suppose, but in any case, he didn't decide to use that. Okay, so that's the Deviant Moon Emperor for what it's worth. And so any comments on that now? I'll try to listen. Okay, hearing none, let me mention one other thing. I'm going to take the headset off again so I don't confuse myself with my own words. I also received today my BOTA Tarot Deck. This is it. And this is from a group that is based on mystical traditions from long back. I'll read the back of their box. Man, know thyself, a key to the riddle of the universe, a key to the mystery of your own self. And it's BOTA stands for Builders of the Adytum. Now, I don't know what the adytum is, but in any case, seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. Why should, okay, now one of the significant things about this deck is that all the cards are uncolored. So it's like a coloring set that you're supposed to color yourself. And by doing that, you're going to learn something about yourself. And I think I may have, yes, I did create one slide of those to share with you. There it is. Okay, so these are cards out of the BOTA deck. And of course, these are cards are very similar to the Rider Waite cards. But what they're demonstrating, they're not exactly the Rider Waite cards, but what I'm demonstrating here is that they're talking about the Kabbalah again. And what you can see on this one little card with the Kabbalah on it, I'll just read it because it's probably too small for you to read. At the number 1 position, right here is the crown, called the Kether. Then number 2 is wisdom, and number 3 is understanding. That's Chokmah and Binah. And number 4 is mercy and severity. Number 7 and 8 are victory and splendor. Number 6 is beauty. Number 9 is foundation. And number 10 is kingdom. And so I'll be talking about this more later on in this course. At the moment, I'm just getting used to the idea of the Kabbalah with the Tarot. I'd never learned that in the past. And so I'm trying to get some understanding of these things. But basically, what they're saying is that if you color your own tarot deck or paint your own tarot deck, you're going to understand things even much more deeply than other before. And Brendan says, we have all experienced the sense of insecurity of the self. The addict, if he can tame the beast, is stronger than Helios. I'm still working on it. And we all work on it, I think, Brendan, absolutely. Because, you know, if you look around in the grocery store, there's a lot of fairly rotund Americans. I'm probably 30 or 40 pounds overweight myself. And so we all have addictions to something, whether our current addiction in this household is chocolate, but it could be anything. And, you know, it could be liquor or what have you. So let me listen again. Look back on the chat here. So BC says, to ultimately conquer the Father and to assume his God qualities is to conquer reason. The Jungian Tarot and its archetypal imagery, according to Robert Wang, who painted the Jungian Tarot. And you know, I suppose certainly that's true, and Robert Wang is the most knowledgeable person I've found on this in terms of the Tarot, and a Jungian in his own right, since he painted the Jungian Tarot. And so the point isn't overcoming reason per se or conquering reason. It's finding the balance between reason and the rational and the irrational. And, you know, I think Stephen Heller had it right here, because it's divine love. And we have to be able to accept that. Otherwise, you know, if you just go around giving a lot of orders, what kind of a life is that? You don't share, you're not sharing anything with others. And so you have to learn life. Now, I've had an interaction with a gentleman in the last week that was very interesting. And I was talking to him about how this duality of masculine and feminine, we have to turn it on its side, because what has been sold to us over hundreds of years now is a duality which says that men are rational and women are irrational and don't make any sense. And so we have to be stronger and stronger and stronger on the logos, on the rational side. And that's a completely wrong-headed way to look at the world, because we need logos. There's no doubt about it. I mean, if you look at the materials behind me in this image, everything that you can see except me, myself, but including my eyeglasses, everything you can see is the result of perfect logos. In other words, everything that you see there is in some way created perfectly. And that's what the logos can do for us. It can help us design things and work out exactly how they should be made so that they're pretty, and so that my Hamilton College thing shows clearly here. Isn't that nice? And so that's perfect. But none of it is alive, not a single bit. And that's the point. And so Eros is where we live. That's life. And so Eros isn't irrational and crazy. Eros also contains our life. And if we start to recognize that, then we're going to change our attitude a bit. And so therefore, I think we ought to take this duality of masculine and feminine and put it on its side and let the hard goods speak for themselves. Obviously, everything that you have in your house, including your house, was perfect at some point, and you acquired it somehow. And you wouldn't have it in your room if you didn't like it, and it had to be made perfectly according to logos, very rational rules. But in the end, none of it is live. And so if you're going to live your life, then you have to accept the Eros. That's the key. And so now I'll try to give a little listen here and see if I can hear something without going crazy. So Nick, Jing, any thoughts here?
Oh, no, not at the moment.
Okay. It's early, I know. Okay, so this has been, there's one
I want
other.
to say something.
Oh, okay, Jing, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say, I was cooking, so I didn't really have time to say much. But anyway, I heard this emperor thing, and Brandon mentioned, it's actually surprised me. I see, I think the other artist as well, the painter, can't remember his name. But anyway, I found a lot of very intelligent people, they didn't have kids, which I think it's a little bit pity because it seems a lot of people who don't think much, they have a lot of kids. So in the end, our world will populate with people less intelligent. Anyway, so I have this idea, I think, like you said, half of the family don't have father. If they have this organization, whatever, to that people who don't have kids and want to mentor the young man and create this kind of like intellectual father, like mentorship, I think that'll be terrific. Anyway, just some idea. I was thinking because through my own experience, I found the mother and father really nurture their kids very differently. Like Jordan Peterson mentioned in one of the chapter, mom tend to be more tender and not restrict. It's just most of human nature,
Yeah.
And father tend to be more restrict. And once you lack of that, it's really not balanced. But it's very hard for mom to be very restrict by their nature, and they want to protect their kids. So I think it's really lack of the fatherhood really will hurt the kids overall. Anyway, there's just some thoughts I had.
Yeah, I think those are correct thoughts, Jing. I'm sorry I'm not very responsive. I'm getting two sound feeds here. And so when you're speaking, I'm hearing what you said a minute ago, plus it's coming through now. And so it gets very confusing for me. I apologize for that. I have to get that fixed tomorrow, but that's what's going on for me. Okay, I'm going to do one more thing in the interest of completeness on the Emperor. I also want to read Ciolo Thompson's version of what the Father is about from the Line Strider deck, the Line Strider's journey here. And she has said some, I think, very insightful things when we read the Empress. So I want to read the Emperor to you so that it'll be on this video. Remember, this is her Emperor card, how she painted the Emperor. And so this is what she says. Keywords: leadership, authority, reason, structure, discipline, masculine power, maturity, stubbornness. And then here's the quote. The Emperor is the masculine principle, the animus to the anima of the Empress. He is a patriarch and represents power and authority. He is the father figure of the deck, the provider and protector, while other cards like the Empress and the High Priestess urge you to look to the unconscious realm for answers. The Emperor, like the King of Cups, champions the mind over the heart. If you are faced with choices or complex situations, now is the time to draw on your experience. Worldly knowledge and authority. In a reading, this card may be urging you to assume the attitude and confidence of the Emperor. In some cases, this card may be telling you that you will be interacting with an Emperor, and your best course of action is to offer your expertise, authority, and knowledge. These are the qualities the Emperor respects and values. In a reading, the Emperor often represents a strong, dominant male character in your life. This is especially true if the card manifests in the past position. He could be a father, boss, older brother, figure, or teacher who has influenced you in your current path. In a business reading, the cards may be telling you to set aside emotion or concerns about relationships and to focus on data, facts, and a clear analysis of the situation. Organization and discipline are your best assets at this time. Combined with swords cards, the Emperor clearly indicates mind over matter and the necessity of a fact-based approach to upcoming decisions. Paired with Pentacles, money matters are at the forefront of your life. Make spending and investing decisions based on facts rather than feelings. Wands indicate a time for action and decisive, aggressive movement. Have you been contemplating expansion, new ventures, or investments? Now is the time to man up and make your move. In my mind, this card is most complex when paired with Cups. Think about the strong figures in your life and their relationships to one another. Is there a powerful male figure dominating the social atmosphere? Are you the one who is currently the male dominant role or being called to assume that role and responsibility? Paired with the Chariot, be cautious of the price of ambition. Temperance urges balance and a measured approach to even these masculine matters. In his reversed aspect, the Emperor may indicate abuse of power, a domineering personality, or that someone is behaving in a tyrannical manner. Rigid thinking and over-reliance on worldly knowledge may be impairing your progress and harming your relationships. When the Emperor appears reversed in a reading, the cards are not urging you to discard logic or structure, but rather to fight to turn the situation back to its positive aspect. This is not the time to rebel or cast your own authority, or cast off your own authority. It is a time to use structure with calm understanding, logic, and discipline. to create a better, more fulfilling situation. And the astrology is Aries and Scorpio, the number 4, and associated with plants, ginger, thistle, and Atractylotus. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think she summed up some of the key things that we were talking about here. And so, just looking at some of Brendan's comments here. So Brendan says, I have memories from the age of 10 up to the age of 40 from elementary school kids who are getting into trouble to PhD students who need help with clarifying their arguments. Educare means to open, and we must all try to open minds. And then he goes on, I like that reading. Many times I come across over-rational or irrational males who are mad with my feminine existentialism. I often think, how best can I serve them so they can bring to bear the feminine in themselves? And that's a great comment, Brendan. I don't think I have an answer to it, unfortunately. I think that, you know, you have to represent yourself, and I think if you understand these kinds of archetypes, you can at least know where you are and know where the other people are, and then figure out what is appropriate in the occasion. You know, you're always in the eternal moment, right? And I still have my eternal moment right here, which I'll read once more. Let me pull it out. So we're all in the eternal moment. And so let me read this quote from Dr. Jung. And I'm currently looking for the actual source of this, but it was quoted by Edward Edinger in The Bible and the Psyche on page 54. And it was cited in footnote 38, but I can't figure out what the footnote means. So I'm currently researching that. So, but here's the quote, and this is from Dr. Jung. The great thing is now and here. This is the eternal moment. Ah, yes, Brendan, thank you. And if you do not realize it, you have missed the best part of life. You have missed the realization that you were once the carrier of life contained between the poles of an unimaginable future and an unimaginably remote past. Millions of years and untold millions of ancestors have worked up to this moment, and you are the fulfillment of this eternal moment. One should take each moment as the eternal moment, as if nothing were ever going to change, not anticipating a faraway future, for the future always grows out of that which is. You must live life in such a spirit that you make in every moment the best of the possibilities. And so, it's signed C.G. Jung, and I had signed a copy, especially for Brendan last Christmas when I gave him this. This was my Christmas present to my friends and colleagues last Christmas. I have a different one this year, which is a book And I'll start you all now because you may want to give these as Christmas presents to your loved ones. And it's this, the Radiant Sutras by Lauren Roach, PhD, 112 Gateways to the Yoga of Wonder and Delight. And I saw, when I got this book, which I got by serendipity, I was immediately in love with it. And my wife finally did get her own copy of the book, and she and this morning she announced to me that she's now meditated on all the sutras, and she loves particularly the last ones, but I love all of them. And the one that I particularly liked, or one of the ones that I did, because it had to do with hearing, which I'll read to you. It's in one of the Banter Sutras. And before I tell you, read it, I should read something from the introduction, where Dr. Roche tells us something about what these sutras are. He says it's a conversation between the goddess, who is the creative power of the universe, and the God, who is the consciousness that permeates everywhere. For short, they call each other Devi and Bhairava, or Shakti and Shiva. They are lovers and inseparable partners, and one of their favorite places of dwelling is in the human heart. And so what he's saying here is that the creative power and consciousness are like a yin-yang of energy that flows through the universe. And so I'll just read one of them. This is number 16. The roar of joy that set the worlds in motion is reverberating in your body and the space between all bodies. Beloved, listen. Find that exuberant vibration rising new in every moment, humming in your secret places, resounding through the channels of delight. Know you are flooded by it always. Float with the sound, melt with it into divine silence. The sacred power of space will carry you into the dancing radiant emptiness that is the source of all. The ocean of sound is inviting you into its spacious embrace, calling you home. So I guess I'll leave that for tonight. I guess I don't have much more to say about the father. I guess I could tell a couple of stories out of school about my father and fatherhood. My father was a naval officer, and he was often away at sea. And it wasn't until I was separating from my first wife, and she was trying to convince me not to leave. And so she bought 2 books about what it feels like for the children to have a broken home. And she shouldn't have done that, or she should have read them before she gave them to me, because basically they said that children of broken homes often develop into very creative people. And one example was Leonardo da Vinci, among many others that were there. So it wasn't a very strong argument for staying together, I have to say. But in any case, one of the things that I learned in the process is that it is archetypal for the father not to be present. Okay, father is always out doing things. When we're growing up, father is most often working, and the parent that you're interacting with most often is your mother. And you know, very often if she's mad at you, she'll say, wait until your father gets home. Of course, my father was such that, you know, he never played that game. And so he would never do anything if she threatened something like that. But you have to make the best of the possibilities. And in my case, I determined that even though I no longer wanted to live with my first wife, that I still loved her and do love her today. And I feel about her more like a sister than a spouse today. This is 35 years later, I can say. I stayed close to my daughters, even though one was 5 years old. I made over 200 trips between Washington, D.C. and the Syracuse, New York area, where they were living at that time. So it's about 1,000-mile round trip for a weekend, and I made about 200 of those trips over a 12-year period. So that I could spend weekends with my daughters. And the result of that commitment is that my daughters seem to be as close to me as they may have been if I had been in the family all along. And so I urge you, if you are in a marriage, to try to do your best to make it work. All of us are more or less the same, so it's not going to be magical to have someone else of the opposite sex other than your husband or wife. And children do need both parents growing up. That's an important thing. And you know, when you change partners, you find out that the other partner is pretty much the same as the last one, and so in many ways. And so, you know, my recommendation is to stay together and enjoy the growing up years of your children, which don't last that long. They're a very short period of time in your life. We're living up toward 90 or 100 years old today. So, you know, if you cut that short, you're cutting short some of the beautiful juice of having a family. And so that's what I would urge. And that's my advice as a father figure, to the extent that I can do that. And Brendan says, the roar of joy. Yes, the roar of joy. And he also said, like that reading, many times I come across over-rational or irrational males who are mad with my feminine existentialism. I often think, how best can I serve? I guess I read this before. They can bring to bear the feminine in themselves. And, you know, I don't think that we need to overthink that. I think that we make the best of the possibilities, and we be ourselves, Brendan. That's my advice. And don't worry about whether you're activating something in his and some other guy's unconscious or not. Just do the right thing in the circumstance, and you will achieve your purpose, is what I would guess. Now, let's see if I had anything else that I wanted to share that I haven't.
Can I say
I
something?
think not. Okay, I got all those.
Yeah. Can I say something about the feminine
Maybe I
and
didn't get this last one. So let me share one other image of kings. This is from the Line Strider deck, and these are the kings. What happened here? Here it is. Okay. So they're the kings from the Line Strider deck, and you can see how interestingly different they are from some of the other kings in some of the other decks. But, you know, the point is that with all of these, artists have been working these archetypes for thousands of years, and they all express them in a different way. And so the kings are in the tarot deck are you know, they're masculine figures, but they're masculine figures at the top of that suit, and they are not wholeness. And so what you want is wholeness, where you've got it all together. And, you know, that's what the Emperor is all about. And I'll just give you this screen from Stephen Heller again. And you can see this is a very self-confident emperor. He's got everything together, and he's got love and power balanced in his life. And that's the key. And that's what you want, to have a happy family and a happy life. And so I'll listen again and see if I can get anything else before I hang up.
Sing.
Skip. Yeah. Skip, I want to say something. I don't know if you can hear.
Very, very quick. Say it quickly, so in 1 minute.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to see one of my observation about male and feminine, masculine and feminine.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
found it quite interesting. Any like in architecture or art, like anything related to art, usually, because one person told me he found like the women in architecture are more masculine and the men are more feminine. So it's kind of interesting. And you see a lot of fashion designer guys are actually very feminine. So I found art actually is the people who actually have both characters to balance. That's why they can access to so many other people, you know, their humanity. So they have the both masculine and feminine in one person. You know, that I was listening to some music yesterday, and I found one of the singer. I think she's lesbian. She has this beautiful voice. And then one woman said, "Oh, you know, I really like her music. I really question my gender now." So, but I was thinking, you know, like because she encompassed this both of this character that appeal to both man and woman in some way. Anyway, that's my observation.
Yeah, I think that there are. Yeah, I think that there are professions that bring out a more balanced person, and certainly architecture is one of those, because you have to present not only strict functionality, but you also have to present beauty, something that's attractive to people. And so it does obviously stimulate both masculine and feminine. I think that's what you were talking about. It worked for a while, and then it started to get difficult when I was hearing both versions. did I address the basic point, Jing? I hope, but. Yeah, okay, good. Brendan says, the key to being a conductor is making space, bringing to birth expression in your singers, a vulnerability which gets out of the way of the performers. Yeah, and my problem with trying to be the conductor of this evening is it's like you start conducting and then 1 minute later the orchestra starts to play the same thing all over again. It's like you have another conductor next to you. So you start conducting and you're a minute into it and it's not around. And all of a sudden there's a second conductor and he's also starting the piece again. Just got very, very complicated. So I really don't know what my problem is. I probably have to reboot my computer. And so Jing says, yes, in art, most people have both feminine and masculine. I agree with that. And so with that, I'm going to apologize and just call this this hodgepodge of an evening to a close, and hope that I can clear out my sound problem by the next time I have to host a Zoom meeting. So anyway, nice to see you all. Peace, and we'll talk again next week. We're going to do the High Priestess. So everybody loves a High Priestess. They're virgins, and so we'll be talking about the High Priestess archetype, and that is the number 2 card in the tarot. And obviously you have to have parents before you can have a virgin. So that's why Robert Wang wanted this class to start with the Empress and the Emperor. But now we're going to go back and talk about the virgin daughter. And so that's the next archetype we're going to address next week. And so I look forward to seeing you then. I hope this has been useful. And after about 8 or 10 weeks of these, things are going to start meshing together in a very interesting way. So it requires a bit of patience up until then. So thanks, Nick and Jing and Brendan, for being here. And also Nancy and others that are who are watching on YouTube, and
Thanks, Skip.
We'll see you again soon. Oh, by the way, there is no Wisdom Path Colloquium tomorrow. Dr. Ann Lee is going to speak to us on Sunday at 1 p.m. instead of tomorrow at 1 p.m. I offered her that so that we could get a bigger following. And so I urge everyone to come and listen to Dr. Ann Lee speak to us on Sunday. And also a week from Sunday, we have Becca Tarnas coming, who is going to talk about her work that compared Jung to J.R.R. Tolkien. And so everybody loves Tolkien's work, and it's been made into movies and so on. So Becca Tarnas has an interesting take on that, and that will be a week from this coming Sunday. And Saturday night, we're going to have Eva Rider, who's a therapist in Santa Cruz, California, who is going to talk about the Kabbalah Tarot and that combination. And so it's a mystery area for me. I'm looking forward to learning about that. And so that's going to be Saturday night at 10 p.m. 10 a.m. for you, Nick, on Sunday.
Oops, sorry. sorry,
So-
sorry.
So anyway, peace. Take care, and we'll see you
Okay.
again next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.